Welcome back to another episode of the Suits in the Stadium podcast. I am your host, Casey Coleman. Joining me on this week's episode is Steve Vanderpool. Steve is currently the Senior Director of Advancement and Alumni Relations at the Gooden School. Steve has also spent time working in Major League Soccer, as well as with the LA Galaxy, the Women's World Cup, and also the Special Olympics World Games in 2015. Really enjoyed my conversation with Steve. I think the biggest thing that stuck out from our conversation was when we were discussing the question of what if someone doesn't have formal experience in sports, for example, their education or work experience, but would like to work in sports? How would you suggest they go about it? He talked about the idea of just volunteering for events, realizing at these different events how many different organizations, corporations, teams, venues are present for an event. He gave the example of the NCAA tournament at Staples Center. There's the Staples Center staff. There's the NCAA staff. There's the staff of the school that's hosting it. There's, different sponsorships that may be going on and different things like that. And just so many different opportunities to get plugged in. So really enjoyed my conversation. Hope you enjoy my conversation with Steve Vanderpool. Folks, please help me welcome in this week's guest, Steven Vanderpool. Steven has previously made a few different stops in sports, including helping to launch Major League Soccer in 1996, worked the FIFA World Cup in 1999, was the director of Stats LLC, and was the VP of Communications and Media Relations for the Special Olympics World Games in 2015 in LA. Steve is currently the Senior Director of Advancement and Alumni Relations at the Gooden School. Steve, how are you today?
I'm well, Casey. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Super excited to jump in. As I just mentioned, you have a huge background in sports. I have since left sports, but did some amazing things in sports. So looking forward to picking your brain on that.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought that was going to be what I did, and then you kind of evolve, and I got involved in nonprofit, and that was really a fulfilling experience.
Yeah. You also spent some time with Make-A-Wish Foundation as well. Did not want to forget to mention that. So we'll jump right in. What pivotal experiences in your education or early career helped you realize the sports industry was the right path for you?
Well, when I was a little kid, I was your typical kind of stat head. I mean, back then, all you had were yearly magazines and books, who's who in baseball, the basketball books. You didn't have an internet. So I consumed all that kind of stuff. And in fact, I even brought it down. This was the first sports book my parents ever bought for me. I think I can't remember what year it was done, but I still have that book. And
Love it.
I was fortunate enough when I was 12 years old to be introduced to a college sports information director. And Glenn Alford at Idaho State spent like 2 hours with me talking about what he did, the experiences he got to have off of that. And as a 12-year-old kid, if someone's telling you can have a career doing what you love, I mean, you're all in. So for the next several years before I went to college, that's all I focused on. I wrote letters to several different sports information directors around the country, and I ended up working for two of them. One, Bob Rose, who was at Stanford at the time. I interned for him at the LA Express, the original United States Football League. And then later, I worked for Tim Tessalone at USC. So that was probably the most important thing. But out of that came the experiences of working for a pro football team, then volunteering for the '84 Olympics, and then getting to work for ABC Sports during those Olympics, and then going back to college and having all that on my resume as I move forward.
Fantastic. In the ever-evolving world of sport management, how do you stay updated and continue to learn beyond formal education? Are there ongoing educational experiences or resources you recommend?
Well, you got to remember, when I first started in sports, there wasn't even fax machines.
Sure.
We typed our press releases. I mean, if we had an IBM Selectric 3, we were really living the high life when we typed press releases. But they were run off on mimeograph and not on copy machines. So a lot has happened in those years. Not only fax machines, but the internet, Microsoft Windows, social media, all those things came about as my career was happening. So you've got to stay on top of those things. Probably the big thing now, if you're coming up, whether you want to do this and you're in college or you want to do this and you're doing something else, is educate yourself on AI,
Yeah.
because that's the thing. Like what different steps are going to happen that AI is going to play such a pivotal role, and as people are hiring, that might be something that's going to be on a resume that pops out.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely Chat GPT is growing quickly and we got to get on board. What advice would you give to individuals who are considering a career in sport management but may not have a traditional sports related education or work experience background? How can they leverage their existing skills to break into the industry?
Yes. Well, the first thing, and I asked this of every person that ever asked me about working in sports, and I think every one of your listeners should ask this question. Are you willing to work on a weekend, several weekends, maybe several consecutive weekends?
Yeah.
Are you willing to work at night? It's amazing how many people say like, "Oh, I don't want to work on a weekend." It's like,
Yeah.
well, when do you think sports happens?
Yeah.
And I had a kid who I got an interview at Fox. They loved him. They were going to hire him for a job in their highlights department, and then they told him that he'd have to work on a Saturday, and he said like, "Well, I can't do that." And so I suggest to your listeners they ask that question. But given that, if you can get past that question, there are so many different things as a civilian that you can volunteer for. There's two really good entities in this town: the LA Sports Council and the LA Sports and Entertainment Association, I believe it is, who bring events to Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and they're always looking for people to work those events. And if you can get in there and you can work hard, be on time, uh, do what they ask, and get to meet people, it's amazing how many times they will call you back, because all of us in sports, we are like the path of least resistance when it comes to staffing. If we find good people,
Yeah.
they're going to keep coming back. And that's what I would recommend to get your foot in the door. There's training camps for NFL teams and
Yeah.
NBA teams. They're looking for people. And then also, you can get involved with your local university. And I'm not talking about the USCs and the UCLAs, because they're fully staffed up with full-time paid people, but it's the Cal State Fullertons
Yeah.
and the leagues that maybe don't have as big a staffs, like say the WNBA, that are looking for people to work games, game management stuff, that you can get your foot in the door and get to meet people. And that's when you can have conversations about what you want to do. And if you're in a career like if you're a lawyer or you're an accountant or you're in marketing, there are jobs that now pair up with those in sports. You just need to like talk to someone who currently does that job in a
Yeah.
sports team, and find out what is that path. I think that contacting people is the best way to do it. Don't send them a LinkedIn request. That is probably the quickest way, you know, that I just don't like it. I think it's really, honestly, I think it's okay, so you're connected to me on LinkedIn. That's great. But you know what? If you drop a note to me in the mail, even if you send me an email, I mean, email is probably, second tier, but if you drop a note to me and, hey, can I have half hour of your time just to talk about what you do? I
Sure.
mean, like I said, Glenn Alford gave me 2 hours back when I was 12 years old. So I feel like I have to pay that forward. So
Yeah.
um, it's just, trying to get involved with things that are easy ins, like working different events, like a World Cup, like an Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Contact LA84. Find out if they need volunteers for
Yeah.
their street team or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially here in Southern California, many great opportunities, as you mentioned, with LA Sports Council
Mm-hmm.
and the Sports Entertainment Commission. You worked approximately 20 plus years in the sport management field. To what or to whom do you credit your longevity in the sports world?
Um, One, I had great mentors. Glenn was phenomenal. From there, my internship with Bob Rose, who after the USFL went on to work for the Giants and the A's. Once I started working, Tab Bennett, who is my boss at the University of Illinois, he was a great mentor. Tim Tessalone, phenomenal, probably the best SID in the country. I think it's pretty clear that that was a big loss for USC when he retired. And then some other people, Marsha Robbins, who had worked for the Lakers, who started her own PR firm. She was the one that when I left USC and I worked for her and worked on the Pro Beach Volleyball Tour, she's the one that taught me how to work with media who were not sports media. And out of that experience, that's how I got hired at Major League Soccer. Because
Okay.
I always tell people the first soccer game I ever attended was the Major League Soccer inaugural game as the league's director of public relations.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't deal with the on-field stuff. That was Dan Cordemanch, who's still with the league and phenomenal. But Marsha was the one that taught me that. And then real quickly, Randy Bernstein in MLS had the foresight to hire me because he had seen what I had done in beach volleyball. And then Women's World Cup, Marla Messing, phenomenal leader for that breaking event. And then the woman who really got me interested in working nonprofit, a woman named Suzanne Sutter, her last name now is Chestnut. She had been the board chair at Make-A-Wish Foundation for the country, and I met her, and she really inspired me to get involved with that. And to this day, I'm still a Make-A-Wish volunteer.
Love it. Mentors are super vital for sure. I love that you brought that up. I did have a question later in our conversation, but you got out ahead, and I think it's great. None of us got to where we're at on our own, and as you mentioned, people did it for us, people did it for you, and you're hope to pay it forward as well. So I think that's great. Transitioning to the advice portion of our conversation, what are the key skills or qualities that you believe aspiring sport management professionals should focus on developing to stand out in a very, and I mean very because I'm in it right now, competitive job market?
Well, to be a good writer is always helpful because not everyone is a good writer. It's something I do, something I do fine at. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it is nice to learn that skill to be able to tell a story. And you need to be able to tell that story verbally as well. In Make-A-Wish, you've got to be able to tell a wish story. That was one of Suzanne's big things she drilled into, is you always have to have your own wish story. No social media. Even if you're not the social media director, understand everything there is about it, creating stories, when to post, what kind of things to post. We have a family at our school. The woman runs a company, and I've learned so much just listening to her tell what she does.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any language skills other than English, you know Spanish, but you maybe haven't really practiced it since high school. Redevelop that, because that's going to be an important thing to be bilingual. If you could speak Mandarin, even better. As we talked about, AI, knowing AI,
Mm-hmm.
and then all these things will allow someone. They could be the difference between hiring you and hiring someone else, because maybe they're hiring for a PR department job. Actually, they're hiring for 2 PR department jobs. One is a regular job. One is you're in charge of Spanish-speaking media. Well, if you can come in and show that you can handle both those jobs, you're going to be the hire. I guarantee it. And then just the eagerness to do anything. There's nothing, if you are not willing to stuff media kits at 7 a.m, then you're probably not cut out to work in sports. I worked with a really wonderful guy named Jim Trecker, who he worked with U.S. Soccer, but he had a great resume. He had worked with both Joe Namath when he was with the Jets, and he had worked with Pele at the Cosmos. And Jim was always there stuffing media kits. he didn't, that wasn't something that he just said, do this, and then he went and got breakfast.
Yeah.
So always show that you're willing to do whatever needs to be done to get the job done.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Nothing is too big or too small for you to do. The sports industry is known for its high pressure moments. How do you personally maintain composure and make strategic decisions during intense situations?
Well, you kind of have a routine how you go through. I mean, first off, you as an individual, you need to decide like, okay, is this a life threatening thing? Is this going to endanger people, or is it something that it's bad news? You need to sit down with your team and hash out what your first response is going to be, because the first response is always going to be the most important.
Yeah.
Um, never lie. Never lie to the media. I mean, that will not only hurt you with the thing you're currently trying to handle, it'll hurt you down the road. So you give the information that you have available, that you're okay to share. Like I don't do this kind of stuff with our school anymore, but for example, um, there's certain things you can't share because of privacy issues. But you sit down with your team, you have your roadmap, your crisis management roadmap, you go over it, you plug in your holes, and you come out, and then you just kind of see how things go. But my experience is that if you're honest, you share what you have, you don't lie, and you keep them updated, you're going to get through a media crisis very quicker than you normally would.
Yeah. Absolutely. Another big thing that I've learned just even in my time in the Long Beach State program, something that's very vital to getting out there and to, as we mentioned before, breaking into this industry is the idea of networking. It's very crucial in this industry, not just in this industry, in all industries, but in sport management as well. How can individuals new to the field effectively build a strong network in the sport management sector?
Well, as I said, it's important just to get that foot in the door. So the entities we've talked about, but look at just Google like local universities, local sports teams. Find out which teams have their camps here. Look at which European soccer clubs are touring in the summer.
That's good.
Reach out to MLS in New York City and say, hey, because their marketing department handles, or their wing of their marketing department handles these tours. So they're looking for people to work these events, and it might be something like, I mean, honestly, if someone says like, hey, we need a driver. We need a driver that's just available to, the coaching staff or whatever.
Yeah.
Take that job. You
Yeah.
never know where it's going to go.
Sure.
I saw a great story about the Miami Dolphins coach, how he got involved in sports. His he got a gig as a ball boy for the Broncos after he lost his hat at some event, and a coach bought him a hat, then gave him a job, and then after college, he became an assistant coach for like quality control, and worked his way up, and now he's the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So you never know when that door is going to open. You never know who you're going to meet, but like I said, when you meet someone, you work an event, you work the NCAA tournament at at the Staples Center, and
Yep.
Pepperdine's running it.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to meet people at Pepperdine. You're going to meet people from the NCAA. You're going to meet people from other schools. You're going to meet media members. You're going to meet the Staples Center staff. You're going to meet Mike Roth, who runs PR over there. When it's over, your first instinct shouldn't be to send a LinkedIn request. Your first instinct should be, and this is really old school, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be laughing and say, like, write letters. I mean, that they don't even teach cursive in many schools now. So, but it's amazing how at least I react, and people of my generation act by getting a note,
Yeah.
a thank you note, because that takes time to do. It takes time to mail. And all it needs to say is, thank you. I enjoyed working with you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me about what you do. if there's ever an opportunity to work with you again, please let me know.
Yeah.
And I mean, you keep those things. And I've had a lot of people I've met through that. I've had a lot of interns who have gone on to really great things. Lori Okamura was my intern at USC. She went on to become the board chair for USA Volleyball. So it's just something that it's just a personal touch. If you
Yeah.
just send a LinkedIn request after meeting someone, uh, they're going to know why you were talking to them.
Yeah.
Not that you want to learn more, that you just want to have that in your thing.
Yeah. No, I think the personal touch is a good piece. I had a professor at Long Beach State that suggested doing that after job interviews, and I implemented it into my kind of post-interview routine after that of,
Mm-hmm.
finding the address, the team address, the, whatever, and sending that handwritten thank you note for sure. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely have implemented that while being in the program here at Long Beach State.
Well, and it shows my age, but it is interesting. And just a quick story. So when I worked at Make a Wish, one of the things we were wrestling with was, should we eliminate mailing letters to donors, because it was
Okay.
a major cost.
Yeah.
But our research showed that the older donors preferred it
Sure.
because they got so little mail, they
Yeah.
understood it was special, and they would react to that. And I think if I got a note card in the mail, I guarantee it, I'd open it up,
Yeah.
because I'm not getting those. I'm getting, you'd get an email just said, hey, thanks for this or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, love it. I think it's great for sure. Great touch. You mentioned a little bit earlier when we talked about getting into sports that you got to work weekends. The hours aren't conventional. It's not a 9 to 5, 40 hour a week job. With that comes the idea of maintaining a good work-life balance. How do you not get overwhelmed with your career and still make time for family and friends and things you enjoy doing outside of work?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is tough. One of the reasons I left USC, and that was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, was because I had gotten married the year before, and my wife basically told me, she's like, I never see you, because we were going right from football into men's basketball, and I was the men's basketball publicist. So every
Okay.
other weekend I was traveling, and when I had to write a press release, I couldn't just pull out my laptop and sit on the couch and write a press release. I had to literally go into the office
Yeah.
to do that. So, um, uh, one, it's whoever the people in your life, if they know you are doing something you're passionate about, and they're understanding about that, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
My wife has worked in retail her entire career. And when I first met her, it was great because if we had a 12:30 football game, she would set her schedule so that she would work during the day and then be off at night. So having that great partner is very important. I've always been very impressed with Trudy Tessalone, because Tim had that job where he was working 7 days a week for so many years, and yet he was still a great father and a great husband, and made that time. Another great guy, and it's good to quiz about this, is Jake Ullman, who's a senior VP at Fox Sports.
Yeah.
I've known Jake. Speaking of like meeting people along the way, Jake was a intern in the marketing department at USC when I
Okay.
first met him, and then when I worked at Stats Inc., we worked together because we were on the Fox lot.
Yeah.
You just need to manage expectations. When you say you're dating someone, they think if they don't follow sports, they think at 10 o'clock after the 7 o'clock game is ended that you walk out of the press box and you can go, out and have a beer. Well, no,
Yeah.
you've got maybe 2 to 3 more hours
Yeah.
of work. But then what you have to do is you have to make that time up. You have to be present. If you have kids, you need to be there when they're doing their plays and their sports and whatever. And I've been really blessed that I've had bosses. And this is a good tip as well. Find bosses who evaluate you and based on if you get your work done. If you get your work done, you don't need to be in the office. They don't care. They just want to know the work is done. If you say, I have to leave for 2 hours to go watch my son play Little League Baseball, I'll be right back on working on this after I get home. Those are the best bosses to work for. So managing that expectation, but understanding that if you drop that ball, you may not be working in sports very long.
Yeah. Fantastic insight there. The supportive spouse piece was a question I was going to follow up on, but you hit it on the head. Just, it's about them knowing that you're doing what you love to do. And they make adjustments for you and you make adjustments for them. And, it's a great harmony. And shout out to Jacob Ullman as well. I had him as a guest on season 1 of the podcast.
That's great.
So got to chat with him. And he has actually set up 2 separate tours for me at Fox Sports to tour what they're doing there, and got to sit in on a podcast there as well. So shout out to him for that.
Yeah, there's people that I've met along the way that I always try to role model myself after in terms of how I manage my work-life balance. One of them is Jake, Tim as well, but guys like Dan Quartermanch in Major League Soccer, and also Josh Schrawich, who was the Dodger PR guy for a number of years, and now is the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Okay.
I think the Hall of Fame is his dream gig.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it came at a time where he was able to move his family to that area.
Okay.
And that's part of New York. And it's just, we were there this summer, and it's just a beautiful place to raise your family in those years.
Yeah, absolutely. We've hit on it multiple times in our conversation, just how competitive this field is to break into. Final question in the advice portion. I know you've hit on a few. Just wanted to give you a chance if there's any more to share. Do you have any tips, tricks, or insights that people can use to set themselves apart in such a crowded occupation?
I mean, other than what we really talked about, nothing really jumps out. I mean, really just being there, being engaged.
Yeah.
When you show up to work, don't show up in say a t-shirt, but if the expectation level is a collared shirt, don't show up in a polo. You don't need to be, if you don't need to be in the suit, don't show up in a suit, because you're just gonna stand out.
Yeah.
Be there early, stay late. Like I said, whatever they ask you to do, it's not beneath you.
Yeah.
I think just once you can get that foot in the door and work those events, you'll meet people, and it's cool. And don't share with them right off the bat that the whole reason you're doing this because you want to work in the profession. Just say that, you know what, I've always loved sports. This is a way to be involved. Yes, I would love to go from being an accountant to doing something in sports, and then you can kind of ease into that transitional speech.
Yeah, for sure. Bringing it home, final few questions. What is the most heartwarming or memorable sport moment you witnessed or experienced? Maybe something we as the casual fan would never see on TV, but you had the chance to witness or experience?
I've been really fortunate in that I got to work for Major League Soccer when it was first launched. Got to help organize the Women's World Cup in '99 when we were told no one knows or cares about women's soccer, and why are you playing in big stadiums? And then the Special Olympics, World Games, and all 3 of those things. There was doubters. There was not as much awareness as you would have liked going in, and those things all ended up being big deals. Eventually, it took Major League Soccer some time, but here we are, almost 30 franchises.
Yeah.
And what's heartwarming for me is when I run into people or I spend time with people that I worked with at those entities, because it takes you back. It takes you back to the long hours, to the grind, to the chip on the shoulder, to that we're going to prove them wrong. For the 20th anniversary of the '99 Women's World Cup, they unveiled a beautiful statue in front of the Rose Bowl of Brandi Chastain celebrating.
Yeah.
And a number of the players were there, and staff from the World Cup and everything. And just just that look, that we had this moment together, and that we're still friends, and we still appreciate that moment. And that's the way it was for all the three things. So, having interned in the USFL, I think that was really good because it did give me that chip,
Yeah,
and I took that forward into those three entities. But I think that's the thing, is those friendships still endure, as do many in the places I've had stops.
sure, sure. Next question: if you could switch roles with any athlete for a day, who would it be and why?
It's I think I would probably pick John Cena, honestly.
Okay.
One, I think he just seems like he's having fun all
Yeah.
the time. He's done very well as an actor. He has the ability to apologize. I mean, he's very critical of The Rock for missing WWF stuff for his acting. And when he realized, well, shoot, I can do this too. He was very apologetic to The Rock. But the thing I always love about John Cena more than anything is what he's done for the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Yeah.
By far, by hundreds, he is the greatest wish granter in the history of the foundation. I believe he is approaching 600 wishes.
Wow.
And we had an event where we honored him, and a mom got up and spoke. And she didn't introduce or say which wish it was or whatever. You would think it was one of the first wishes, because she talked about all the stuff he did and all the time he spent with her son, and that they kept asking him if he needed to go, and he kept saying, no, I'm here. I'm here for you. And at the end of it, it turned out it had been a wish that had been granted 1 month before.
Wow.
And he makes every single one of those wishes that way. So it's a big challenge to keep that kind of energy when you're traveling all over the world and
Sure.
everything. But I think he really considers that the biggest honor of his life.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a feeling when you said John Cena, that was the route you were going to go, especially with your involvement with Make a Wish for sure.
Well, I was thinking about it. I mean, I love Jason Curse. I think he's kind of the same way. It's great dad, great teammate, loved in the community, understands that wins and losses, while terrible losses are terrible, they're not the end of the world.
Yep.
I highly recommend, if you haven't watched it yet, to watch the documentary on him. I believe it's on Netflix. It's really, really well done. But definitely not his brother. The whole Taylor Swift thing is absolutely is nuts. Like I can't even imagine being in that. Being in.
Love it. Love it.
Mhm.
If you could choose one song to play every time you walked into a room, what would you choose and why?
I probably would choose. There's a song by Tom Petty. It's called Walls. And it's not stadium rock or anything, but I just love the opening to it. Some days are diamonds, some days are rocks, some doors are open, some roads are blocked.
Ooh, good.
And that really is kind of the way life is. That's the way this job is.
Yeah.
There'll be days when not every day is game day. There's days where it's like a job, like any other job, where you're grinding away and no one's watching and no one appreciates. But the payoff is that ultimately you have game day.
Yeah.
And my favorite time working at USC for football was before games, going down the field, walking around. And then once the games start, I grab my hot dog and my soda, and I could just watch the game, because
Yeah.
we really weren't managing anything. It was just playing. And
Yeah.
that's when that's when all those hours pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Final question. Sports often brings people together and creates unforgettable moments. Can you share a personal sport memory that left a lasting impact on you? Again, it doesn't have to be one you worked, maybe one you attended as a fan with your family, with someone else.
The biggest moments for me are when I see people interacting with kids,
Yeah.
spending the time with them. When I worked with the women's national team, that's why I love those guys, Foudy and Mia and Brandy and Joy and all those guys. They would practice for hours and then sign autographs for another.
Yeah.
They would stay there several hours after games. Um, One of my favorite Make-A-Wish granters was Landon Donovan. He would always have the kid to a Galaxy practice the day before a match, so it was kind of a casual walkthrough.
Yeah.
But then after that walkthrough, he would spend as much time as the kid wanted. And then after that, at the game, he'd have him at the game. They put him right next to the field. And then after the game, Landon would run over and give him his game jersey. And just to see the way kids, how their heroes react is so important. There's nothing worse than being disappointed by someone you idolize. And for me, that those are always the great moments that you don't see a lot of. You hear, sometimes you hear more about like, oh, my kid didn't get an autograph. Well, you were autograph 501,
Yeah.
and the bus was literally having to go.
Yeah.
So one of the things I learned from Mia that I use to this day at our school is that she always said, when you talk to a child, a small child, come down to their eye level. So I've worn out a few pairs of slacks at our school, just going down to a knee to talk to a kindergartner.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference. They're more willing to talk to you because they literally don't feel like you're talking down to them.
Yeah. You're not as intimidating when they're at their level. Well, Steve, thanks so much for taking some time just to share about your journey as we kind of walked through, starting with MLS through Special Olympics, and then obviously what you're doing now at the Gooden School. Thank you for taking some time to share some advice and wisdom and being a part of the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure, Casey. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Suits in the Stadium podcast. You can still find the audio version of our podcast wherever you get your podcast, including Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, and many more. New this season, you can find the video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Please make sure, if you haven't already, to follow us across social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We release new episodes every Monday, so make sure you subscribe so you never miss a single episode. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one.